The Adeptus Astartes. Fell the terrors which lurk among its dark corners. Striking with unrelenting focus and overwhelming firepower, each chapter must hone their preferred methods of warfare to most effectively cull the enemies of the Imperium. For today, we shall elucidate the chapters of the Space Marines derived from the lineage of the brooding Ravenlord, Corvus Corax. The successor chapters of the 19th Legion, the Raven Guard.
From the darkness we strike, fast and lethal, and by the time our foes can react, darkness there, and nothing more. The founding legions of the Adeptus Astartes are characterized by their disparate and often contrasting methods of waging war. Some legions are renowned for their martial prowess, others for their expertise in siege warfare or fortification. Yet some legions, more than others, are maligned for tactics with which other Astartes might label as cowardly or dishonorable. For today, we shall be elucidating a founding legion characterized not only by its unconventional tactics, but also immense struggle and ill fortune. The 19th Legion of the Adeptus Astartes, the Raven Guard. The history of the 19th Legion would be amongst the most persecuted and destitute of all the Legiones Astartes. Drawn from holy terrors subjugated techno-savages of the Xeric tribes of the Dustfields of Asiatic, the savage tribesmen would skirmish against their neighboring Indoneski bloc for resources. With the Emperor's unification of terror, the tribes would give their firstborn sons to the Emperor's gene forges to birth the Astartes of the 19th Legion. The 19th would serve as the Emperor's hidden hand of reconnaissance, sabotage, and assassination. Conducting surgical, bloody engagements at the behest of the Master of Mankind, the 19th would quash the upstart rebellions and plots to dethrone the Emperor. Offering their foes the chance to capitulate before they would strike, the Emperor would not employ his assassins of war, alike to the 8th or savage 12th. Defeating would-be armies with only a single casualty, these shadowy sentinels of the newly born Imperium would bleed dry their enemies without revealing their forces. Their very existence kept secret until their reunion with their Primarch Corvus Corax. Shunning adulation or marks of honor, such as the laurels of victory, the 19th would nonetheless earn many victories across the Sol system. Yet during their engagement with the Xenos threat on the Jovian range of the moon of Lysithea, many of their number would perish. For 2 centuries, the 19th Legion would wage war in the name of the Imperium, until finally, they would be united with their Primarch on the moon of Lycaeus, for their gene father had undergone many trials of his own. Separated from the Emperor during the scattering of the Primarchs, Corvus's gestation pod would land on the barren moon of Lycaeus. Orbiting the forge world of Kievar, the system would be ruled by the tyrannical Tech Guild overseers. Raised by the slaves of the mining workforce, the infant Primarch would be hidden from the enslavers and guards of the mining colony. Learning quickly due to his gene-forged providence, Corax would mature and develop speech, the skills to hide from his oppressors, and the ideals with which would formulate his personality. Due to his accelerated aging and maturation, the slaves of Lycaeus would idolize him as a gift to the downtrodden, naming him Deliverer and Savior in anticipation of his future deeds. The young Primarch would be tutored by his protectors and resolve to free them from their tyranny. Embodying notions of human dignity, justice, and liberty within his being, Corax would form a resistance to the tyrants of Kievar, and with time, overthrow their cruel regime. Moving unseen due to his preternatural gifts of stealth and infiltration, Corax would seize the moon of Lycaeus' weapon systems and bombard the overseer planet of Kievar with orbital atomic bombardments. At this moment, the Emperor of Mankind would arrive within the Kievar system and reunite with his long-lost gene son. Alone, the Emperor would speak with Corax for many long hours. With their audience concluded, Corvus Corax would resume his campaign against the tech guilds of Kievar. For once they had been utterly destroyed, with no assistance from the Emperor, Corax would be proven worthy and assume the mantle of Master of the 19th Legion, the soon-to-be renamed Raven Guard. With the tech guilds of Kievar capitulating and the moon of Lycaeus renamed Deliverance, the Mechanicum of Mars would rebuild the moon's infrastructure and construct a gargantuan looming tower, the Raven Spire. With the 19th Legion under his command, Corax would reorganize the methods and tactics of his legion to his liking. Purging the old customs of the Terran Xeric tribes from the Legion's ranks, Corax would revile the Legion's history of oppression and occupation. Displacing the Terran senior officers with his new Lycaean Astartes, Corax would refine and perfect his Legion's expertise of stealth and unconventional strategies. So effective were his innovations that during a Strategio Simulacra to test his Legion, Corax would defeat his brother Primarch, Rabute Guilliman, during the simulation. Though after 2 subsequent victories, Corax would never again defeat the Master of Ultramar, as he adjusted and refined his counters to his strategies. Further advancing and modifying the armaments and weapons of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the ingenuity of Corax would be shown with the introduction of the Shadowhawk gunship and Whispercutter flyer. The Kievaran guilds now serving the Raven Guard, lending their ingenuity to construct unique and tailor-made adaptations specifically to favor the 19th Legion's tactics. Kievar now aided the Imperial war effort, if not by output, but as a stalwart forge world, specializing in many peculiar contraptions. Their ties to the Legio Gryphonicus further bolstering the Raven Guard with the aid of a Titan Legion loyal to the Primarch of the 19th. Bringing worlds into compliance during the Great Crusade, it would be the Raven Guard and Corax whom would be tasked with bringing into compliance a singularly important world which would bear great significance to the future of humanity: the world of Istvan Free. Destroying Istvan Free's military unprovoked with various precision strikes, the Raven Guard would succeed in bringing the world into compliance. Despite some resistance, a delegation of Istvanians surrendered to the Raven Lord. Swearing to accept the teachings and ideals of the Imperium, the Istvanians would begin their integration with the civilian populace left to integrate them into the fold. Dismantling the planet's religious traditions and assigning the planetary governor, Vardus Pral, to rule the world, the Raven Guard would be ignorant to the planet's destiny as the staging ground for humanity's greatest betrayal. Further aiding the newly appointed War Master, Horus Lupercal, during the compliance of the Battle of Gate 42 within the Orcam Sophis cluster. Brought to compliance originally by the Lunar Wolves, the people of the cluster had fallen to a mass psychosis of Xenos origin. The Xenos parasites would mature within the eye sockets of their victims and gain rudimentary control of their hosts with maturation. Forming a hive mind consciousness, these hosts would be dubbed the Unsighted Kings, to which Horus Lupercal would swear an oath of moment to reclaim his once compliant world. Seeking to prove himself worthy of his new title, the War Master would call to his aid the Space Wolves, Iron Warriors, and Raven Guard in their campaign against the Unsighted Kings. As Horus assigned the Raven Guard to assault the forces of Gate 42, Corax would denounce the strategy as a waste of lives and resources, and propose to lead his men to carry out a series of feints to draw out their enemy. The Primarch of the Iron Warriors, Perturabo, would scoff at the plan, almost causing the two brothers to clash. Yet it would be Leman Russ, Primarch of the Space Wolves, whom would prevent blood being spilled. Counseling the Raven Lord, Russ would beseech Corax to heed the words of Horus, for after all, he had been chosen by the Emperor to preside above all of his brothers as War Master. Mustering his forces, Corax would assault Gate 42, assigning most of his vanguard to comprise of the Terran-born Astartes in order to sacrifice his less favored sons. Regarded as the Raven Guard's bleakest battle in history up to this point, the 19th Legion's assault companies would be decimated. The cost of taking the gate, the lives of thousands of Raven Guard Astartes. Horus would slay the Unsighted Kings dispelling their hold over the populace. Yet with so many lost, the Raven Guard now stood as the smallest in number of the legions at 80,000 Astartes. Removing himself from the command of the War Master, Corax would swear never to fight alongside Horus Lupercal again. Yet as a result of the culling of the Raven Guard's Terran-born Astartes, the Legion's warrior lodges would diminish, with Horus's hold of the Legion as a result all but cleansed. As the Great Crusade waged on, the Raven Guard would be honoured with trialling a new pattern of Astartes armour, one which would not only become synonymous with the 19th Legion, but also the subsequent civil war for humanity. Due to their depleted numbers, the Raven Guard would be the obvious choice to outfit with this new armour specification. Despite the misgivings of Primarch Perturabo, the Mark VI pattern of power armour would be a resounding success. Improving upon the design, the Raven Guard would see to the mass production and approval of the Mark VI design. For their service, the design would be dubbed the Corvus pattern and be distributed amongst every Astartes Legion. Yet in many regards, this honour would be overshadowed with the armour's most significant legacy being its widespread use during the cursed Horus Heresy. Upon the world of Istvan III, Horus Lupercal would launch his scheme to overthrow the Imperium. Laying waste to his own legion's loyalist elements and those of other traitor legions, the Emperor, upon receiving the news of the betrayal, would send forth a fleet to destroy the fledgling usurper. At the spear tip, 3 loyalist legions would lead the charge: the Iron Hands, Salamanders, and Raven Guard. Unleashing righteous fury in the name of the Emperor, the initial assault of 3 legions would be further bolstered by the Iron Warriors, Night Lords, Word Bearers, and Alpha Legion. As 7 legions would descend upon the traitorous and self-depleted forces of the War Master, victory would be assured. Yet as the second wave of reinforcements would make planetfall, the loyalists of the 10th, 18th and 19th Legions would be betrayed. Caught in the crossfire of 8 traitor legions, the loyalists would be massacred. Ferrus Manus, Primarch of the Iron Hands, would be slain, with Vulcan, Primarch of the Salamanders, being captured. Their legions would be left in disarray, with only Corax remaining in command of his legion. It would not be enough to counterattack the traitors. Despite fragments of the now shattered legions escaping the Istvan system, with Corax amongst their number, all 3 legions would be utterly crippled. From 80,000 Astartes, the Raven Guard now stood at barely 3,000 beaten, jaded, and demoralized survivors. Corax would be injured during the massacre, yet salvage what Astartes he could from the bloodshed. Attempting to rapidly rebuild his legion, Corax would travel to the Sol system and commune with the Emperor, and be given knowledge of the existence of chaos and the intent of Horus's rebellion. Aiding Corax with the revelation that the genetic materials of the Primarchs resided within a secret facility within Terra's Himalayan mountains. Retrieving the genetic materials, Corax would attempt to mass recruit new initiates into the Legion with the use of the so-called Magna Mater of the Primarchs. Initially successful in developing 500 Astartes into the fold of the 19th Legion, the efforts of Corax and his apothecary Vicente VI would tragically be foiled with the intervention of the cunning Alpha Legion. Tampering with the materials using a demonic virus, the 2,000 aspirants transformed from such stock would become horribly mutated with horns, talons, and other maladies. Further escalating Corax's problems, the Alpha Legion had now infiltrated the Raven Guard, causing mistrust and screening to further delay his legion's renewal. With his attempts to rebuild his legion in ruins, Corax would realize his plans to replenish the Raven Guard had been a mistake. And so, after screening the Alpha Legion's infiltrators from their ranks, Corax would accept that the Legion would continue as they always had, with their slow, painstaking methods of recruitment. Yet with such resolve, Corax knew that to face the traitors, he would need to devise a new plan of action. Lacking enough firepower to face the traitors en masse, the Raven Guard would attack the supply convoys weapons deliveries, logistical headquarters, shipping yards, and worker camps of the traitors, denying the War Master useful if not crucial supplies intended for his final assault of the Siege of Terra. The Raven Guard would continue to sabotage the traitor war effort as best they could until its resolution during the final battle between the Emperor and Horus. With the traitors repelled from Holy Terra, the Raven Guard would be reorganized into a founding chapter of the now ordained successors of the Codex Astartes. For decades, the now chapter of the Adeptus Astartes would rebuild. Undermanned and without purpose, the 19th would further hone and perfect their doctrines of war. Welcoming the decision to divide the legions of Astartes into chapters, Corax would regardless seek vengeance against the traitors, alone. After a solar year of grief-stricken penance for his actions during the Horus Heresy, locked within the Ravenspire, Corvus Corax would depart deliverance. Disappearing from the Imperium, Corax would venture into the Eye of Terror in his quest for retribution. The last words uttered from the Primarch to his sons prior to his departure: nevermore. As the millennia have waned without the word of their Primarch's return, the Raven Guard would spend much of its time campaigning across the eastern fringe of the galaxy. Now led by their chapter master, Kayvan Shrike, the 19th's might is now split amongst the stars as several covert battalions poised to face the enemies of his Imperium. The ultimate objective of such scattered campaigns, known only to the Master of Shadows. The gene seed of the Raven Guard would be greatly diminished due to the events of the Horus Heresy. Attempting to hasten the replenishment of their broken legion, the Raven Guard's gene seed sabotage by the Alpha Legion would lead to further problems with each new generation of the Raven Guard. Drawing much of their genetic material from Holy Terror, the transformation of aspirants into the Adeptus Astartes is arguably more difficult than any other Loyalist chapter. Irrespective of the 19th's countless casualties resulting in their harsh training, those aspirants whom survive their training will receive transplanted organs with a high rate of degeneration. The vast majority of organs implanted within the Raven Guard do not function properly, with many implants, such as the mucranoid organ, which regulates their endurance of hazardous temperatures and the vacuum of space, failing to mature. As a result, the Raven Guard bear the mutation of chapter-wide pale skin pigmentation, due to their melanochromic organs' inability to reliably adjust to solar radiation. Pure white in aesthetic, it matters not whereby the recruits to the chapter hail from, as all who survive their gene implantation shall become pale as wraiths with pure black hair and eyes, as is characteristic of their gene stock. Further resulting from their genetic deficiencies, the 19th also bear the so-called curse of their Primarch, the lure of the shadows. Reserved in demeanor, if not antisocial in their behavior, the Raven Guard are terse in their communication. As the curse progresses, 3 stages of the Astartes character shall become evident. First, the Battle Brother will become more reclusive, choosing to fight amongst only small strike teams, and shall become resistant to joint chapter operations involving direct assaults and tactics, verging on objectively disobedient refusal to follow orders. Second, the Astartes shall become ever more brooding with their dealings not only of other chapters, but also their brethren, skulking in shadows, choosing to remain silent until absolutely necessary, and manifesting an aura of unease amongst his squadron. Finally, the Raven Guard Astartes shall grow to despise even his most stalwart of battle brothers, believing his tactics and decisions outweigh the merit of his peers, even should more experienced or battle-tested Astartes' strategies objectively bear greater results. Recruitment within the Raven Guard is amongst the slowest within the Loyalist chapters of the Adeptus Astartes, yielding high casualty rates due to their combined training regimes and failure rate of their organ transplantations. The Raven Guard have never truly recovered from their ignominious fall during the Horus Heresy. Spending an inordinate amount of time as members of the chapter's scout company, each batch of recruits are accompanied by several veterans to observe and mentor their progress. Never mobilized at full strength as outlined by the Codex Astartes, the Raven Guard would struggle to muster a force capable of matching the strength of their first founding brethren, recruiting their aspirants solely from their homeworld of Deliverance. The need to transport genetic materials from Holy Terra on a regular basis would also contribute to their slow replenishment of numbers. However, due to the Raven Guard's preference and unmatched skill in stealth, sabotage, and infiltration, their casualties in war would be below the average incurred by other Astartes chapters. Trained by the chapter's Shadow Masters or the Ravenspire, aspirants of the 19th are taught in the methods to move silently with minimal detection. Despite their objectively bulky armor, the Raven Guard display the uncanny ability of wraith slipping within the labyrinths of the Ravenspire. Packing their armor with earth and rags of fabric, the aspirants learn to muffle the sounds of their armor until they are capable of mastering the secret rites of silence employed by every battle brother of the Raven Guard. Constantly training and understanding the art of wraith slipping, every Astartes of the chapter is required to maintain their understanding of this formidable art, lest they erode their mastery of its techniques. Though not infallible, the recruits will come to understand that such near-perfect camouflage and concealment is the hallmark of any veteran of the chapter. The initial formation of the 19th Legion would be comprised similar to its Unification-era contemporaries, divided into chapters, each containing battalions, companies, and finally squads. Most individual Astartes would identify their service to the Legion by denoting their role within a company instead of their chapter. With the reunion of their Primarch and the Imperium of Man, the 19th would incorporate tank warfare into the Legion, though their use would dwindle with their resultant decimation during the Horus Heresy. Numbering only 4,000 Astartes by the end of the Horus Heresy, the Raven Guard would reorganize the companies into Talons, Falcons, and light vehicle and air support squadrons into Hawks. Fielding many specialist squads and formations, the Raven Guard deployed a preponderance of reconnaissance squads in comparison to their cousin legions, also employing a large contingent of Moritats, Astartes who bore suicidal tactics in their methods of battle and would conduct more assassination and sabotage missions than any other contemporary legion. Though employing librarians during the Great Crusade with the Edict of Nicaea, Corvus Corax would agree to disband his legion's librarius. Reassigned as frontline troops, the librarians of the Legion would never fully recover due to the events of the Istvan V Dropside Massacre, culling the majority of their number. Commanded solely by senior officers originating from Deliverance by the time of the Horus Heresy, Corax would loosely overrule his lieutenants due to his nature of valuing candid and honest counsel. Not willing to be treated alike to his brother Primarchs, Corax would expect his men not to serve him as a serf would to a tyrant. Protected by his loyal Shadow Wardens, the Honor Guard of the Legion, Corax would devise further specialist ranks to be employed within the Legion. Amongst the first company, the Mordaefan would serve as the elite reconnaissance and scouts of the 19th. Nicknamed the Shadow Masters, these members of the Raven Guard would, alike to their Primarch, be able to shadow walk, the ability employed by their Primarch to walk amongst mortals seemingly unnoticed. Wielding chainswords, bolt pistols, sniper rifles, and on rare occasions Volkite armaments, the Mordaefan would communicate using strange whispers known as Stalk Argot. Said battle cant of sighs and whispers would be to the untrained ear alike to gusts of wind or environmental sounds. With few surviving past the Istvan V Dropsite Massacre, the Mordaefan would seemingly disappear as their numbers dwindled. The Deliverers would comprise the Legion's dreadnought contingent. Due to their inability to conduct the subtle arts of war employed by the Raven Guard, these dreadnoughts would be deployed only when all attempts at sabotage and stealth would fail. Often sent to distant Crusade fleets and engagements, these units would bear little favour from their Primarch. The Shadow Killers would result from veterans of the Legion succumbing to the intense stress of the battlefield. Afflicted by the so-called sable brand of their eyes becoming pure black in colour, these unfortunate Astartes would seek relief only in causing as many casualties by their hand as possible. Frenzied and lacking all sense of self-preservation, the Shadow Killers would on occasion recover, but more reliably further descend into suicidal rampages. Such units would be seen in other legions of the Astartes, whom would be labelled by Rabute Guilliman as Moritats. Dark Fury assault squads would conduct brutal assassination strikes against their enemies. By no means subtle in their application of violence, the Fury assault squads would attack high-value targets, whilst the wider legion waged war. Armed with lightning claws, they would tear their enemies to shreds and deploy Darkwing pattern Storm Eagles and Whisper Cutters to close the distance to their targets. Due to the chapter's doctrines of concealment and espionage, the Raven Guard do not employ embellishments or gaudy designs upon their armour. Encased in jet black armour, best suited to aiding them in their concealment within the shadows, the 19th complied to the outlines of the Codex Astartes with only minor alterations in its overarching guidelines. Despite their proclivity to obfuscate or remove their heraldry during engagements with more canny adversaries, the Raven Guard would diminish their command markings and squad identifiers in the wake of the second founding. As a Codex-compliant chapter of the Adeptus Astartes, the Raven Guard divide their numbers into 10 100-man-strong companies. Officers within the chapter would be commanded by the captains, known as Shadow Captains, with each chapter master, following the departure of the Raven Lord, assigned the title of Master of Shadows. Proudly displaying their chapter iconography of the Raven on their left pauldrons, their shoulder plates trim, no matter their rank, shall always remain the purest of black. Their right pauldron displays their squad specialization, such as close support, fire support, veteran, or command staff. Though the 19th's fire support sigil differs from other Codex-compliant chapters by the symbol of an explosive detonation. Their right pauldron's trim denotes their company, with white reserved for the Elite First Company. Other colours include gold for the 2nd, red for the 3rd, green for the 4th, black for the 5th, bronze for the 6th, purple for the 7th, silver for the 8th, and blue for the 9th. Squads are designated in low Gothic numerals on the left knee plate. Rank is denoted by helmet designs, denoted by skull iconography and colour coding. Sergeants bear a simple skull on the crest of their helmet, whilst veteran sergeants retain their skull icon and paint their helmets white. Lieutenants bear a red and white stripe pattern on their helmets and an ornate design on their right pauldron, while Shadow Captains resemble the white skull-adorned helmets of the veteran sergeants, with the addition of an ornate captain design on their right pauldron. Some high-ranking senior officers paint their shoulder plates purest white, and on rarer occasions, pair these with white paint on both of their arms. Yet for every design or signifier of rank, the Raven Guard also employ heavily encoded Auspex signifiers into their armour designs, allowing for their Battle Brothers autosensors to identify senior officers during their concealment. Though within these outlinings of heraldry, there also exists a unique signifier for the chapter's elite. The black Ravenclaw symbol adorns the right pauldron with a white background. Reserved for the most venerated and long-serving veterans, this marking denotes Astartes of the chapter, renowned for their guerrilla warfare and versatile command experience. Following the outlined strategies and guidelines of the Codex Astartes, the Raven Guard eschew several tactics outlined by the tome due to their preference for waging war and limited deployable force. Experts of guerrilla warfare, attritional warfare, and coordinated strikes, the Raven Guard target weak points in enemy defenses, and with speed, cripple the enemy by destroying high-valued infrastructure and targets. Unwilling to engage in reckless assaults that could endanger their Astartes, the 19th rely heavily on their scout marines in gathering information during reconnaissance missions. Deployed in small squads, rather than the full might of the chapter, each captain and their companies fight independently from one another. Regardless of the oversight of their chapter master, each Raven Guard company offers aid to Imperial forces as required. Often criticized for their tactical efficacy due to their loose authority for command, the Raven Guard nonetheless exemplify incredible discipline when commanded by their captains. Deploying several rapid maneuver vehicles in combat, such as land speeders, attack bikes, and Thunderhawk gunships, the Raven Guard support these elements with drop pod insertions of dreadnoughts and highly favour aerial assaults via jump packs. An infantry-heavy chapter, their preference for speed and manoeuvrability precludes their use of heavy armour, such as Predator tanks or Land Raiders, yet some are held in reserve should they be needed. A mix of special forces units and mechanized infantry, the Raven Guard field overwhelming aerial superiority during engagements to enable surgical strikes behind enemy lines. Often armed with lightning claws, Raven Guard kill teams offset their opposition's numerical superiority by targeting their commanders. Conducting many rituals from their homeworld of deliverance, each neophyte of the 19th must embark on a meditative trance to hunt the avians of the world of Kievar. Utilizing wraith slipping, the neophytes must hunt the ravens of Kievar unnoticed before snatching one up and snapping its neck. The skulls of their prey are then worn as totems hung from small chains around their necks or right pauldrons. These Raven Calvaria represent the Astartes warriors' honor, and should they fall in battle, are collected, similar to the ancient Terran dog tags. Those whom recover these totems shall carry them into battle for their fallen brothers until they shall return to Kievar and bury the skull in the soil of their chapter's homeworld. Fallen Raven Guard Astartes are stripped of their armor, weapons, and gene seed to continue their service to the Legion. The bodies of the fallen 19th left for the carrion of battle, a feast for their venerated namesakes. Despite their reverence to their Primarch Corvus Corax, the Raven Guard do not show the same fervor to the Emperor of Mankind, unlike most of their contemporaries. The 19th follow in their Primarch's footsteps, learning from every battle the lessons to be employed to continue the survival of their chapter. Abhorring the tactics of needless shedding of blood akin to the 9th Legion, or the principled yet boisterous blunt force of the 7th, the Raven Guard see the tactics and doctrines of their peers to be unrefined and callous. Their glory would be earned not in the wholesale slaughter of their foes, the rivers of blood slicking from their blades, or the compliance of worlds under their heavy armored boots. Instead, their glory would be in the honor of preserving their brethren, whilst efficiently culling their enemies in methodical and swift engagements. Bearing rivalries, grudges, and even outright contempt for many of their cousin chapters, the Raven Guard set themselves apart as the brooding yet stoic warriors of the Primarch's example. For a blade in the dark is best stayed until the perfect moment to strike presents itself, and should that moment not manifest, all that is required is to retreat, re-strategize, and lie in wait for the next chance to strike. We go where we wilt. We slay who we wilt. Let the Emperor judge the righteousness of our deeds.
The Black Guard are a second founding successor chapter of the Raven Guard. Founded by the commander of Primarch Corvus Corax's honor guard, Gareth Arendi, the dubious master of the Shadow Wardens left behind a legacy of uncompromising duty, no matter the cost it should entail. Deriving their name from the Black Guard created during the Horus Heresy, following Arendi's actions saving his Genesire's life during the Day of Vengeance, the chapter bears immense pride for their forefathers' actions. With the Horus Heresy concluded, the Raven Lord departed into the Eye of Terror, and mere centuries following their founding, the Black Guard began to show signs of decay. Their gene seed causing several of their organs to malfunction. Such afflictions do little to hamper their ability to conduct ambush maneuvers against their foes. Venerated for their service during the campaigns of Doom Gorge and Abaddon the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade, though many of their peers disdain their past, their actions made to defend the Imperium are unquestionable. Clad in white power armor, flanked by black pauldrons, helmets and gauntlets, the chapter utilizes red chest aquillas and tactical designations on their right pauldrons. Stenciling white low Gothic numerals on the center of their squad designations, as a semi-codex compliant chapter, the Black Guard adorn their knee plate with its outlined color schemes to identify their company. The symbol of their chapter, a red circlet bisected by a white lightning bolt and roundlet on a field of black, epitomizes their use of overwhelming firepower. Their proclivity to deploy artillery batteries, such as Thunderfire cannons and Vindicator tanks, lays waste to their enemies, for one can find clear evidence of the chapter's campaigns by virtue of the cratered ruins left in the wake of their onslaughts. Stop blindly obeying the words of the book and look at the situation. You have completed your training, but you must now learn to apply it. Regurgitation is not the answer. Simple analysis and thought must be used to solve the problem. The Raptors are a second founding successor chapter of the Raven Guard. Founded in the wake of the Horus Heresy, this pragmatic band of warriors are said to have been drawn from the raw recruits of Deliverance, thrust into the Great Civil War following the Dropsite Massacre of Istvan V. Spared the mutations wrought from the Ravenlord's attempts to rebuild his legion by use of the Primarch genetic materials tampered with by the Alpha Legion, the Raptor Company earned valor in battle during the scouring of the traitors. Granted autonomy as a successor chapter of the 19th, following the implementation of Astartes reforms outlined by Primarch Rabute Guilliman, the Raptors began to lay the foundations of their warrior creed. Records suggest their early service during the 31st millennium was facilitated as a fleet-based chapter as they embarked upon the stars, rooting out heresy. Earning renown for their effective and measured methods of waging war, within but a few centuries, the Raptors were bequeathed their own homeworld within the Segmentum Obscurus, within close proximity to the accursed Eye of Terror. Tasked with patrolling the Warprift, though not assimilated into its guardians, the Astartes Praesus, for many millennia the chapter cast back the tide of darkness alongside its stalwart allies. Yet the galaxy is replete with many malevolent beings, and with time, the homeworld of the Raptors was sundered by the acts of the War Master of Chaos, Abaddon the Despoiler. It is unclear whether such an event transpired during the 4th or 5th of the Despoiler's Black Crusades, and all that can be gleaned is its destruction between the 34th and 36th millennium. The chapter's repositories of knowledge, ancient relics won through toil, and most valuable armaments lost. Many a lesser band of warriors would buckle under the strain of such catastrophe, and during the 37th millennium, all trace of the Raptors disappeared from Imperial records. Presumed at worst extinct, and at minimum lost for all time, for 2 millennia no account can be found of this mysterious force. Yet during the Caberiad Wars of the 39th millennium, the Raptors returned. Replenished to their full strength despite their grievous losses, none know the methods nor means of their resurgence, yet were proud to see such a gloried chapter return to the fold. Claiming a new homeworld to establish their new fortress monastery during the conflict, regarded simply as Prime, the Raptors made full use of the system's Imperial supply lines to facilitate victory in the name of the Emperor. Traversing to the northern border of the Segmentum Solar, following the Caberiad Wars, the chapter to this day operates from the world known by many titles such as Badwater, Ra, Cortis Pol, and Numina. Its location not disclosed by the chapter to the Adeptus Administratum. All that is known of the planet is its location somewhere within the stellar drifts of the Sutter Spiral Nebula, and has proven impossible to locate by Imperial authorities. Their secrecy extending to within their own ranks, the loss of their original homeworld further emboldens the Raptors to guard their base of operations through use of misinformation and subterfuge. Famed for their service during the Origo Blockade, Sancta Angelis Campaign, Badab War, and Third War for Armageddon, regardless of the few instances of their near annihilation, the chapter refuses to stand idly by as the Imperium is beset on all sides. Showing blatant disregard for many tenets of the revered tome of the Ultramarines Primarch, the Codex Astartes, many an Ultramarine has openly decried the Raptors chapter for their prideful disdain of their Genesire's writings. Preferring to target their foes at range rather than in close quarters, the chapter's extensive use of Scout Marines allows them to gather intelligence before orchestrating complex ambush and stealth maneuvers. Alike to their primogenitor, the Raptors seek to find vulnerabilities in their enemies' lines and determine the best means to overwhelm such exploitable weaknesses. Maintaining sizable land speeder battle groups in excess of their cousin chapters to support their insertions and battle lines, such overwhelming deployments seek to utterly devastate their opponent's ranks with minimal chance of endangering their own men. placing contingent strategies in reserve to allow for fluid strategies and flexible command structure. The chapter sees the prescribed outlines advised by the Codex Astartes as far too rigid to be used effectively. Caring not for their supposed dishonorable actions should they achieve victory, the Space Marines of the chapter find victory alone to be worthy of praise. Scrutinized by their peers for their use of espionage and counterintelligence practices, the Raptors, though aware of the limitations of their creed, have never faltered in administering them with skill enough to achieve unquestionable results. Operating largely independently from their chapter command, each company must be capable of achieving victory without the support of their kinsmen. Never rushing their scouts to gather vital information on the vulnerabilities of their enemies, their effectiveness in battle can all too easily be blunted should they rush into the fray armed with unreliable or falsified intel. Leaving ruses of their own maneuvers in order to attempt to trick their enemies, it is rare for any commander to ascertain the true nature of the Raptors' intent, nor the location of their command centers. Adept at countering opposition forces far in excess of their own numbers, their cooperation with Astra Militarum regiments has proven invaluable in utilizing their allies' resources to best effect. Deploying their Astartes to work within Guard regiments directly, each squad and battalion exceed their former combat acumen by virtue of being led by the Emperor's Angels personally. Due to their exceptional marksmanship and proclivity to use hit-and-run guerrilla warfare tactics, their record of cooperation with mortal soldiers has proven beneficial in preventing the loss of lives typical for most guardsmen. Akin more to a band of assassins than soldiers, the methods used by the Raptors, though incredibly effective, have regardless continued to draw the ire of many Space Marine chapters. Characterized by a grim determination to survive, derived from their prior circumstances, threatening to extinguish the legacy of their chapter, the Raptors have an uncanny ability to adapt and overcome adversity. Bending, yet never breaking, each warrior of the chapter is wary of emotions such as pride or vainglory, and as such refute proclamations of cowardice levied at them should they retreat from battle. Immune to the vices of hubris and dogma, the Raptors, while deeming the Codex Astartes as a useful guide to strategy and tactics, nevertheless look down upon those who deem its words as sacrosanct. Failure is not tolerated, yet neither is total loss of their numbers, and so it is that the Raptors thread the needle of achieving their goals without sacrificing their battle brothers and their equipment needlessly. Proven to be difficult to work with when deployed alongside their cousin chapters, the accusations of cowardice do little to antagonize these stoic warriors. Each senior officer of the chapter deemed worthy only when proven to master battlefield awareness, prioritization of threats, and rapid response to changes in enemy tactics. All Space Marines of the Raptors, regardless of rank, are expected to show initiative and discourage blind obedience. Seeing each war zone and skirmish as a puzzle to be solved, each viable method to diminish every problem must be entertained, for there is no shame in attempting unorthodox practices within their creed. Abandoning secondary objectives should they allow for overall victory, the Raptors care not for articles of faith nor honor if their rejection achieves results. Finding purpose and glory only in deeds made to the Emperor, death is reward enough for these righteous souls. Their gene seed remarkably stable, considering their descendants from the 19th Legion, flaws regardless exist within every member of their creed. Their skin pale to the point of near translucence and hair a jet black. Their non-functioning muconoid implants prevent their skin's ability to endure the harsh vacuum of space nor extreme temperatures, such as frigid environments. Retaining functional Betcher's glands, the Raptors are capable of producing corrosive saliva as a means to injure or digest hazardous foods. Their fatalistic outlook on life, further exacerbated by their Primarch's genetic curse, the most veteran Raptors wrestle with the knowledge that humanity hangs on the precipice of extinction and can lapse into bouts of reckless abandon in order to achieve the embrace of death. Clad in dull green ceramite, adorned with silver chest aquillas, each Astartes paints white tactical rolls on their right pauldrons, with black high Gothic numerals centered on their designs, signifying their squad number. In slight contravention of the Codex Astartes, the Raptors utilize white hieroglyphic numerals on their right knee plates to identify their company number. The symbol of their chapter, a white raptor's head on a field of dull green, characterizes their no-nonsense approach to heraldry beyond utilitarian purposes. Reinforced with Primaris Space Marines in the wake of the resurgence of the Avenging Sun, Rabute Guilliman, the Raptors, now armed with enhanced warriors, continue to hone their strategies with such potent new additions to their arsenal. Their loyalty to the Emperor unimpeachable, the Raptors continue to fight in his name, emboldened with technologies granted by the likewise unorthodox Archmagos Dominus, Belisarius Cawl.
Tread softly, brothers. The foe is close, and my blade thirsts for vengeance.
The Revilers are a second founding successor chapter of the Raven Guard. Drawing many of its founding members from the veteran stock of the 19th Legion, all of which were survivors of the Istvan V dropsite massacre. Carrying the teachings of stealth and infiltration from their primogenitor, the Revilers hold the legacy of their Primarch in high esteem and continue to seek vengeance for the sins committed during the dropsite massacre. Famed for their annihilation of an Alpha Legion warband by way of setting traps during the chase within the Hadrax system, the chapter has earned further glories for their service during the Purgation of Azoth, Battle of Gorgon Depths, Lifon Purge, and Abaddon the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade. Using land speeders and assault bikes to hasten their maneuvers, their Thunderhawk insertions are supported by deployments of dreadnoughts via drop pod. Clad in grey ceramite adorned with silver chestaquillas, the chapter designates their tactical role on their right pauldron with white paint. Imposing the designs with black high Gothic numerals to identify their squad. As a Codex-compliant chapter, the Revilers use coloured trim of their pauldrons to mark their company. The symbol of their chapter, a human skull struck by a bolt of lightning on a field of grey, epitomizes their talents as ambushers. Experts at guerrilla tactics, especially within jungle and wet weather environments, the Revilers strike from behind enemy lines before slipping once more within the safety of the shadows.
You give up your humanity, that the citizens of the Imperium may keep theirs. Pity or despise them, but never expect them to understand. The Death Spectres are a successor chapter of the Raven Guard. Established during the 13th Founding, known by many as the Dark Founding, alongside their compatriots, the Exorcists, this chapter has earned a worthy, if not scrutinized, reputation. Patrolling the boundaries beyond the Imperium's domain, their vigil among the Ghoul Stars, combating foes such as the Cyphor Fiends and Flayed Ones, is as thankless as it is grueling. The records of the terrible foes spewed forth from the Ghoul Stars during the 34th millennium, the era of the Nova Terra Interregnum, prior to their founding, required many chapters to stem the tide of darkness, some of which perished in the fighting. Though a dozen Space Marine chapters were committed to the campaign, only the Nova Marines retain their records of their involvement of the so-called Pale Wasting, the destruction wrought requiring a new founding to stand vigil following the Astartes sacrifice. Unique as the only founding which does not tithe a bank of their gene seed to the Adeptus Terra, though many chapters were sired, no reminders of their legacies remain, with exception to the Exorcists and Death Spectres. Their first chapter master, or Megir, Merin Corcadus, swearing a holy oath at the base of the Golden Throne itself, the Emperor imparted Corcadus a vision of his chapter's new homeworld, the cemetery world of Occludus. Constructing their fortress monastery, Logopol, upon its foundations, the chapter discovered the relic known as the Shadaiax, known in Gothic as the Throne of Glass.
Housed within a domed sanctum known as the Temple of Voices, it is the duty of all Megir of the chapter to sit upon the throne of glass deep within Logopol, upon their promotion to rule the chapter, destined to never leave its embrace. Draining the life of its reigning monarch, the throne of glass slowly petrifies its host into stone in exchange for immense influence over the Immaterium. The chapter's chief librarian, known as the Mesara, typically must replace their master, alluding to the chapter's need for their master to be a powerful psyker. Preparing their forces for an event known as the Kadash, translated into Gothic as Living Chalice, prophecy foretells that should a being of immense importance sit upon the Shariax, the great resurrection shall be achieved. As a successor of the Raven Guard, each Astartes has inherited the genetic flaws endemic within their bloodline, the chapter drafting only the most genetically promising women from the strongholds of the Imperium. Taken to breeding worlds within proximity to Occludus, the chapter drafts the healthiest male children from their mothers to serve as neophytes within their ranks. Injected with lethal, toxic concoctions during their gene seed implantation to become a space marine at the age of 10, only those proven worthy shall revive unaided by their peers during their endurance of the tides of the so-called Black River. Conquering their first death, all Astartes of the chapter must experience a second death for solar hours with their conclusion as neophytes and initiation as fully fledged space marines. Rarely experiencing a third death, only the members of the Librarius wishing to achieve the rank of Codicia shall undergo such a trial, their mastery of mortality imparting them with wisdom and great psychic power. All Death Spectres are marked by albinism, alike to their primogenitor due to their flawed melochrome organ. Their blood-red eyes, another marker for their genetic ties to the Raven Guard. Their Betcher's gland and muconoid organ also inactive. The chapter's Astartes cannot produce acidic saliva, nor protective proteins from their skin's pores to protect from environmental hazards, such as is the case of space marines with flawless gene seed. Somberly accepting their duty to die in the name of the Emperor, the Death Spectres believe that those of their number who fall shall be reincarnated for their deeds. Taking much care to maintain the burial sites of their fallen, all whose bodies are recoverable are mummified and interred within the catacombs of Logopol. Honoring the slain with gestures known as the Salute of Skull and Throne, or the Masrahim, each Astartes places their left hand palm up by their abdomen, placing their closed right fist into their palm. Honored for their service during the Vern IV offensive, Makarian Crusade, Achilles Crusade, Ghoulstar's Crusade, and Abaddon the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade, few chapters have been lauded for their service, fighting within so many war zones of crucial import. Adopting the conventions of the Codex Astartes, the chapter champions the use of assault marines above all. Claims of over 600 Astartes descending from the heavens via jump packs regaled as legend from their service during the siege of Lelithar. Referring to their first company elite as Wargeists, each carries a large power scythe into battle to reap a bitter tally from their foes. Using unique titles such as Megron for their Master of the Flag, Menrahir, 2 members of their chapter council, and Terrorblades to their command squad, there are many customs and cultural trappings which outsiders find difficult to understand. The chapter's librarius, known as the Order, the Death Spectre's chief librarian, leads all due to the absence of their chapter master, committed to duties upon the Throne of Glass. Reading the skeins of fate in order to influence their future to the Imperium's benefit, the Death Spectres are perhaps the most proficient of all chapters in their mastery of foresight. Appearing at the most optimal time to turn the tides of the most hazardous of war zones, the sight of the Death Spectres promises victory and the salvation of countless doomed lives. Clad in black ceramite, adorned with bone-white pauldron trim, helmets, and chest aquillas, the chapter identifies their tactical role on their right pauldron with white, using black logothic numerals imposed on such designs to identify their squad. Using stripes on their right knee plate to indicate their company. As a Codex-compliant chapter, the colors used comply with the tome's outlines. The symbol of their chapter, a bone-white skull upon a pair of crossed black scythes on a field of white, epitomizes their fell nature as reapers of the fell enemies of the Imperium. Embarking to face the most terrible denizens of the Void with no fear of their own demise, the Death Spectres are oblivion incarnate for those who feel the edge of their scythes. The Stormhawks are a successor chapter of the Raven Guard of unknown founding. Hailing from the world of Zephyr, these warriors bear stark contrast to their primogenitor chapter due to their seeming lack of stealth combat doctrine. Clad in white ceramite, adorned with red pauldron trim and chest aquillas, the chapter marks their tactical role on their right pauldron in red, with white logothic numerals centered on such designs to identify their squad. Adopting the conventions of the Codex Astartes, each Space Marine paints their left knee plate to designate their company, in accordance with its prescribed color scheme. The symbol of their chapter, a red hawk's head with a lightning bolt protruding from its beak, belies their nature to strike fast with immense force. Their relationship to their founding chapter, and deeds made in the name of the Imperium, unknown, this antisocial chapter seems intent on keeping their glories to themselves. When our Primarch Corvus Corax led the Raven Guard against the heretic Horus, he stumbled into a trap that killed nearly all of our brothers. We were almost purged from the galaxy, and Corax fled in disgrace. It was millennia before the Raven Guard and their successors recovered from his departure. Centuries more before we learned to embrace our failings as strength rather than weakness. The Emperor has no perfect servants, and so he must make do with broken ones like us. The Stormwings are a successor chapter of the Raven Guard of unknown founding. Hailing from the world of Eerie within the Segmentum Solar, among their most lauded recorded service is their cooperation with the orphaned Tiger Claws chapter. Declared lost in the warp for over 3 millennia, the 100-man Astartes crew of their strike cruiser, Bakasura, had witnessed only mere months within its tides before being spat from within its time-dilating tides. Resupplying the Tiger Claws following their successful repelling of the Dark Eldar, the descendants of the Astral Claws ventured for their homeworld of Crota, seen in the eyes of the Stormwings as truly valiant souls. Championing the embrace of one's burdens as a means to reforge oneself as stronger, each Space Marine crafts a link of thick iron chains to symbolize their strength, shaping them into interlocking talons which bite into their neck to remind them of their failures. Clad in grey ceramite, adorned with red chest aquillas, the chapter signifies their tactical roles with red paint on their right pauldrons. Identifying their squad number with black stenciled numerals atop such designs, as a Codex-compliant chapter, each Astartes trims their pauldrons with its prescribed color scheme to mark their company. The symbol of their chapter, a winged red skull on a field of grey, epitomizes their nature as dour and uncompromising souls. Refusing to ignore nor make excuse for their flaws, this band of warriors finds strength in their shared responsibility to learn from past mistakes to better the Imperium. The Iron Ravens are an Ultima Founding successor chapter of the Raven Guard. Following in their primogenitor's footsteps as masters of shock assaults, their patience in gathering intelligence, thanks to the efforts of their 10th Scout Company, allows for victories made with a single precision drop pod assault maneuver known as the Blade of Corax. Each senior officer a veteran of Rabute Gilliman's unnumbered sons, their early years fighting alongside the many disciples of various gene lineages has encouraged the chapter to be flexible in their tactics used in battle, which has in turn lessened their use of stealth as a champion strategy. Clad in silver ceramite, adorned with blue knee plates, pauldron insets and helmets, trimmed with gold chest aquillas and red vertical stripes on their brows, the chapter identifies their company
with the prescribed Codex-compliant color scheme trimming their pauldrons. As an Astartes gains promotion, more of their ceramite shall be painted blue, with veterans painting their arms, while sergeants and lieutenants are distinguished with varying patterns of red and blue on their helmets. Marking their tactical role with white paint on their right pauldron, each Astartes utilizes white low-Gothic numerals on their right knee plate to signify their squad. The symbol of their chapter, a white stylized raven upon a field of blue, closely mimics their primogenitor's vaunted heraldry. Determined to forge a legacy befitting the sons of the Raven Lord, the resolve of the Iron Ravens to match their peers' accolades is beyond question. The Necropolis Hawks are an Ultima Founding successor chapter of the Raven Guard. Masters of close quarters combat, specializing in urban warfare environments, their use of livery bears unique quirks in order to be legible whilst blending with the obscuring dust and smoke of citified battlefields. Gloried for their service during the War of Beasts, when dispatching 7 companies to the world of Vigilus, their efforts encompassed the pendulum swing which shifted the war in the Imperium's favor through their securing of safe zones. Clad in livid ceramite, adorned with white helmets, backpacks, pauldron insets, and arm plating, the chapter marks their tactical role with black paint on their right pauldron, identifying their squad with white low-Gothic numerals atop such designs, designating their squad with unique heraldic symbols on their backpacks, with white low-Gothic numerals atop black right knee plates, signifying their company. The chapter trims their pauldron with the prescribed Codex-compliant color scheme to denote their company. Standard Battle Brothers paint their vent of their helmets with yellow paint, while sergeants wear red helmets with white faceplates, veteran sergeants adopting white stripes, and lieutenants bearing white helmets marked with red stripes. The symbol of their chapter, a stylized black raptor's head on a field of white, imitates the Raptor Imperialis of Terra's Unification Wars, which was also characterized by many engagements of urban warfare. Typified by cold-blooded pragmatism and carefully applied aggression, these meticulous sons of the Liberator uphold the legacy of deliverance. The Rift Stalkers are an Ultima Founding successor chapter of the Raven Guard. Aiding the forces of the Imperium during their battle against the forces of chaos within the Bargai Stars, the celebrations of the conclusion of 7 brutal years of war secured by the chapter would be known as the Triumphant Return. Cut short by the invasion of Awar, led by the Orc war boss, Grug Face Ripper, the chapter resumed their defense of the world of Tremendix and Aposia as bloodshed resumed. Clad in white ceramite, adorned with black chest aquillas, the chapter marks their tactical role with black stencils on their right pauldron, signifying their company with use of Codex-compliant colors on its trim, whilst using black low-Gothic numerals on their left knee plate to identify their squad. The symbol of their chapter, a stylized black raven on a field of white, honors their primogenitor and the legacy of the Raven Lord. Deployed to the Spiral Nebula against the forces of the Thousand Suns during the fall of the Vision of Torment, the chapter has earned glory for their sacrifices made to defeat the Sons of Magnus for solar months of naval campaigning. The Knights of the Raven are a successor chapter of the Raven Guard. Sired during an unknown founding, created during the 38th millennium, it is rare for the Raven Guard to receive new foundings due to their gene seed's continual degeneration. Driven to earn glories aplenty, to sate their need for recognition in the eyes of their primogenitor, their valor is among the most fervent of the Astartes. Recruited from their feudal homeworld of Coralax, named in recognition of their Primarch, the citizens of this bleak planet willingly offer their most promising youths every 13 years to transcend into the near-mythological figures which descend from the heavens. Fighting beside the Aurora chapter against the Alpha Legion during 744.M41, the results of the Redemption Rebellion forming a bitter rivalry between the two Space Marine chapters. Blaming one another for the catastrophic losses suffered on both sides,
Only with the intervention of the Ultramarines chapter master, Marneus Calgar, did the feuding stop. Calgar suggesting that the Knights of the Raven combat the Genestealer cults of Valix V to atone for the blood spilled of the Aurorans. Famous for their pacification of the Jagan insurrection, Aquila's crusade, Scythe campaign, and war for the Aberrus system, their efficiency fighting Xenos adversaries has been highly prized by the Chamber Militant of the Ordo Xenos, the Death Watch. Clad in silver ceramite, embellished with black chest aquillas, the chapter designates their tactical role on their right pauldron in black, and squad number with white low-Gothic numerals centered on such designs. Their company marked with Codex-compliant paint on their left knee plates. The symbol of their chapter, a black raven on a field of silver, honors the heraldry of their primogenitor and legacy of the Raven Lord. Taciturn warriors willing only to communicate when necessary. Though the Knights of the Raven are a capable chapter, their ability to collaborate with Imperial auxiliaries leaves much to be desired. This has been a tale of the Great Imperium of Man, read by the Remembrancer. The Sons of the Liberator are often maligned for their use of stealth and espionage. For whilst many tales can be retold of legendary martyrs plunging headfirst into the fray, the Scions of Corax find satisfaction only in a duty well done with minimal loss of lives. While vainglory is not a trait flaunted by all chapters of the Adeptus Astartes, many could benefit greatly from practicing more tempered methods of warfare. So care not for those who decry your deeds, should they be deemed unbefitting conventional doctrine. For so long as they achieve results with no loss of dignity, you shall find vindication.